Hi, hello everyone. Hi, English readers, and welcome to the new live new live read along of Wuthering Heights. Today we are reading chapter 8, and I have my earphones because there is some work just outside my house, and it's very noisy, and I think on my video you're going to hear the sound in the background. Unfortunately, I live in a small village, but there's still some work and you would think that it's very peaceful, but sometimes it can get noisy as well, as much as when you're living in the city. So today is going to be a noisy live video, so sorry about that. I hope that it will not prevent you from listening to the content and be focused on the video. So on the text, sorry, not focus on the video, but focus on the story. So I'm gonna do a quick recap now of the first of the chapters and the story that we've just started. So each day, I'm reading a chapter of this adaptation of Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights is a classic of English literature written by Emily Bronte, and this adaptation is aimed at English readers, English learners, sorry, who are intermediate, and their level starts from B1. So that's aimed at B1 English learners. But if you have a high A2 level, or if you are B1 plus, that works fine too. And even if you're B2, because this is not an easy story if you want to read it in its original text. So maybe you might find adaptations that are more maybe adaptations for native readers in modern English. You might find something that is a little bit more extended than this, but that can be a good start, especially if you're not sure whether you like the story or not. So that could be a good start. It's getting really noisy, so we're gonna manage today with this. So this is the story of mainly Heathcliff and Catherine. Heathcliff and Catherine Earnshaw. Heathcliff was a young orphan that was adopted by Catherine's father, Mr. Earnshaw, and he arrived at Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights is the place where Heathcliff and Catherine grew up. It used to be Catherine's parents' house. And Catherine also has a brother called Hindley, and he doesn't really like Heathcliff when he arrives, because he's the favorite of his dad. So he will feel that preference from a very young age, and to have revenge on his dad, he is going to be violent with Heathcliff, and he will hit him and beat him really hard from the beginning. So it's a very violent and dark, I mean, not the book, but the characters. I mean, especially Heathcliff, Hindley are very tormented characters. And there are going to be also a lot of death in this book, because Catherine's parents will die, both by the mother dies first, and then the father a couple years later. But by the age of 13 years old, she would have lost, Catherine and Hindley would have lost their parents. So these two are the first characters that are they're dying first, and then other characters will die then. The story starts with the narration of the new tenant of Thrushcross Grange, and Mr. Lockwood. And he, throughout the book, he's going to be the first main narrator of the story. And but then he's going to ask Nellie, his housekeeper at Thrushcross Grange, another house that is next to Wuthering Heights. And she's going to be the second narrator, but the one that he's going to be the main narrator in the end, because once she's going to start telling the story of Heathcliff and all the other characters, Mr. Lockwood is going to fade away a little bit. I mean, his part in the narration is going to fade away a little bit more, and to leave more space for Nellie. So there are going to be two narrators in the story. And when Nellie is going to tell about, so she's going to tell the story about Heathcliff and Catherine. So we learn that these two characters are very close to each other. They going to develop a very close relationship and a deep love between these two. But the problem is that Heathcliff doesn't have a title or money. So Catherine is going to prefer to marry someone else. And this someone else is Mr. Edgar Linton, who is the son of Mr. and Mrs. Linton, who own Thrushcross Grange. And we learn that Mr. and Mrs. Linton are going to die when Linton will be quite young as well, probably maybe 18, 20 years old. And at that age, he's going to become the owner of Thrushcross Grange, because the land and the inheritance at the time in the 19th century would pass on, would only pass on with male descendants. The female didn't matter. Even if she would own, she would be the inheritant of a house, she would have to give that inheritance to her husband. So it would never belong to a woman. It would always be owned. I mean, land would or houses would always be owned by either their husband or their brother. He would never pass on to females. So we're quite lucky that this has changed now, thanks to women's rights. So that used to be the law, and that means that Wuthering Heights, similarly, would when when Mr. and Mrs. Earnshaw died, especially when Mr. Earnshaw died, it's Hindley who inherited the house. And when he moved back to the house, he really had his revenge on Heathcliff and treated him more like a servant than a member of the family as he used to be when Mr. Earnshaw was still alive. So Catherine is going to marry Edgar Linton because of the fact that although she deeply loves Heathcliff, he doesn't have a title or money, so she reveals Nellie that she will never be able to marry him, unfortunately. So Heathcliff will hear that that conversation that private conversation between Nellie and Catherine and Nellie, and after that he will decide to leave Wuthering Heights, and he's going to leave the place for he will be gone for 3 years. Hi, Melissa. He's going to be gone for 3 years, and after these 3 years, he's going to be back, and he will be back as a new man, as a gentleman, with nice clothes and money. And Hindley, who lost his wife, Frances, she will... Hi, Youssef, welcome back today. How are you? He will he's gonna lose his wife, Frances, after giving birth to their son. So Hindley at the same time will lose his wife, and he's going to have to take care of a little baby boy, Hareton. And unfortunately, it's more Nellie, the housekeeper of what Nellie used to be the housekeeper of Wuthering Heights before she was hired by Edgar Linton and moved to Thrushcross Grange. So she will take care of the little baby boy because Hindley will be completely incapable of raising his child, because he's going to start drinking a lot and grieving his wife until he dies. So Heathcliff, when he's back 3 years later as a gentleman and a rich man, he is going to win a bet or card game with Hindley, and the bet, one of them, was to be the new owner of the of Wuthering Heights. So Hindley, is going to find himself, he's going to be bankrupt basically, and he will have to let his house or sell his house to Heathcliff. So Heathcliff will become the new owner of Wuthering Heights. And that's when that happens when he's back. Yeah. So at the same time, he meets again with Catherine when she learns that he's back. She's so happy, and they start seeing each other as they used to, having this close relationships, spending time on the moor. So the moor is the type of landscape that that you can see in Yorkshire. So there are lots of hills, green, uh, huge fields of grass and a couple of trees. Very isolated place. It's the winter, and especially in the winter, I mean, and there is a lot of wind as well in this area. So a lot of people can get sick quickly, and it's very and um, and doctors are not always efficient, and a lot of death as well, um, in childbirth also happens a lot. So Francis dies of childbirth, and then we learned yesterday that Catherine did die as well in childbirth. Hi Etienne, welcome today. So how are you? And Yusef, I hope you're well as well. And thank you for your message on Instagram. I'm glad that you enjoyed the reading yesterday, and that you will enjoy today too. So I don't know if you Yay. So I'm reading, I don't know if you know that, but I'm reading this adaptation of Wuthering Heights. So you can find this adaptation on Penguin Reader's website, or any in website that sells books. And if you want to have your own copy, and the nice thing with those books is that you can once you buy a physical book, then you get a code, and you can have the audio of the book, and also the digital book, and also some activities, and yeah, some reading and comprehension activities like this, and also grammar and vocabulary activities to test yourself. So unless maybe you already have your own copy. Do you have your own copy of Wuthering Heights? You said to me yesterday that you started reading it but then stopped. What edition do you have of Wuthering Heights? Do you have the original edition, this one? So I do have my own copy. Okay. So as you can see from the reading yesterday, it's a very condensed story, and you can see the chapters are much shorter than the original book. So much easier to much quicker to read as well. But maybe it might help you then to get on with, okay, then yeah, it might help you to maybe start rereading the book. So yes, I think I did a good recap of the story. And yesterday we stopped at the scene, at the moment where Catherine is pregnant, when Heathcliff is back, and she learns that Heathcliff also started seeing Isabella, Edgar's sister, and she's very much in love with him, and they're going to get married they're going to go away there, and one day, and they will get married in a little village without Edgar to know, without telling anyone. So Edgar will learn that information from Nelly. And he is going to be very upset, but also completely helpless because he can't do much against Heathcliff because he's a powerful man now. So and Isabella was completely in love with him, but yesterday in chapter 7 we learned that she actually regrets this choice of marrying Heathcliff because she realizes that he only married her because to make Catherine jealous and to hurt her and hurt Edgar as well. So when Catherine will learn that Heathcliff went away with Isabella, she will become very sick and she will not recover from it. And when she's about to give birth, she will not have enough strength and she's going to be too weak um, to survive to the childbirth. So she will die once the baby is born. And this is a very, very sad chapter because at that point, Heathcliff is at her side, like you can see on this little illustration in the book. He's going to be at her side. And he will both will finally be honest with one another and reveal their real feelings to one another. And they will forgive each other and be kind in the end, be finally kind to each other. But it's too late in a way because Catherine dies after that. So yeah, it also makes you think. Oh, I'm gonna lighten up here a little bit more. So it also makes you realize that it's sometimes good to not wait the very last moment to tell people, your friends or your people that you love, that you actually love them, and the fact of having revenge. It's very but incredibly sad. Yes, absolutely. It's yes, it's very very much contrasting because it's beautifully sad, let's say. It's beautifully sad, and the sadness also is romantic in a way. Their tragic romantic love is beautiful. So that's what makes the story so beautiful and unique as well. So let's start reading chapter 8. Isabella escapes. Okay, so Isabella here seems to be the main the topic of the chapter. After Catherine's death, the early spring weather changed again. The sky turned grey, snow came, and the birds went silent. Mr. Linton stayed in his room, and I looked after Cathy in one of the downstairs rooms. One morning, 3 days after Catherine's funeral, I was sitting with Cathy on my knee when the door opened. A woman entered, breathing hard and laughing. "I'm sorry," she said, "but I know that Edgar is in bed, and I could not stop myself. I have run here from Wuthering Heights. It was Isabella. Her blonde hair had fallen wildly around her shoulders, and her thin clothes were wet with snow. One of her eyes was bruised, and she had a cut under one ear. I made her change her clothes, then sat her in front of the fire with a cup of tea. Sit down. Um, Sit down, Nelly, she said, and put the baby down. I'm so sorry about Catherine, but I'm not sorry for Heathcliff. That awful man has killed my heart. How could Catherine be his friend? Then she took off her wedding ring and threw it into the fire. A carriage is coming to take me to London. Of course, I would like to stay here because it can help Edgar and it is my home. But Heathcliff will hate that. He won't want he won't want me to be comfortable and happy, so he will come here to get revenge on me. Tell me what happened at Wuthering Heights, I said. Hindley wanted to go to the funeral, she replied. So he was trying not to drink much the night before, but this meant he was even more angry and unhappy than usual. He and I were sitting by the fire, and we heard Heathcliff come home. It was the first time we had seen him for more than a week. Hindley suddenly got up with a knife. Hindley suddenly got up with a knife. You and I both hate that man, he said, and now I'm going to kill him. Ooh. Heathcliff came into the kitchen and Hindley ran at him, but Heathcliff hit Hindley and the knife fell to the floor. Then he picked up a big stone and hit Hindley with it. Hindley fell down, bleeding from his nose. Then Heathcliff kicked him and hit his head again and again against the stone floor. After that, he hit me too and threw me on the floor next to Hindley. Get out of here, he said. At that moment, Joseph came and I got up and ran to my room. I stayed a few more days, but Heathcliff was mad with grief because of Catherine's death, and he kept shouting at me and hitting me. Finally, I woke up early this morning and collected my things. Then I came straight here. Soon after, a carriage came and took Isabella to London. A few months later, she gave birth to a son called Linton, who she described in her letter as a thin and weak child. She never returned to Thrushcross Grange, but later she and her brother began writing to each other. 6 months after Catherine's death, the doctor from Gimmerton told me that Mr. Hindley had also died because of his drinking. I immediately went to Mr. Linton. Oh, sorry, that was Nelly. 6 months, yeah. The doctor from Gimmerton told me that Mr. Hindley had also died because of his drinking. I immediately went to Mr. Linton. Hareton is your nephew, so you should come to live with us, I said. There is nothing for him at Wuthering Heights. Mr. Linton was not sure, but he finally agreed to let me go to Wuthering Heights. He told me that Hindley had owed Heathcliff a lot of money because of losing card games. Wuthering Heights is Mr. Heathcliff now, he said. Hindley gave it to Heathcliff to pay him the money that he owed. Oh, okay, so we didn't know that before. Sorry. Yeah, because I know already the story, so sorry about that. To pay him the money that he owed. Hareton is poor. He does not own Wuthering Heights, and he has no money. But when I got to Wuthering Heights, Mr. Heathcliff would not let me take Hareton. I want to keep a child here, he said. So if you take Hareton, I will ask Isabella for my child. When I got back, I repeated Mr. Heathcliff's words to Mr. Linton. He was worried that if we asked for his nephew, Heathcliff would ask Isabella for Linton. This stopped us from asking for Hareton again. This is a very short chapter here. And so it confirms the fact that Heathcliff becomes officially the owner of Wuthering Heights. And but it also reveals how violent he was with Isabella and how she had to escape this violent home and this man. And she had to run away to save her life, basically. So here, I don't know how you feel about this chapter, Youssef. Tell me a bit more about your feelings about this chapter. But the chapter here shows a very dark side of Heathcliff, and also shine a light on his very controversial attitude towards Isabella. And here you can't really, it's difficult to like him anymore. Although he's been suffering his whole life, whether it was because of the violence that how much violence he suffered from Hindley, but also from the rejection from Catherine, it doesn't justify to also. But it's interesting to see that when you've been violated or when you've been hurt so much when in your childhood, how you repeat, how sometimes people, violent people repeat the same pattern with in their own life. Sorry, I missed that last part because my phone died. Oh, okay. So yeah, the end of the chapter basically says that I feel very sorry for Heathcliff. Yes, in a way, but here I feel sorry for Isabella more like, because she has to run away from Heathcliff. Otherwise, she might not survive, or he might kill her, because there is a description of Heathcliff and Hindley fighting. And hi, welcome. There is a very yes, Hindley and Heathcliff are fighting. There is a big fight between these two characters, and we can see how Heathcliff was beating him as he was on the floor. So Heathcliff is so full of rage that it doesn't know really how to stop. So it doesn't know the line, and definitely has crossed the line with Isabella when he started hating her and being and abusing her as well. So whether if it's verbal abuse or physical abuse, this is hard to accept. Yeah, it's difficult to feel sorry for. Personally, it's difficult for me to feel sorry for Heathcliff, because he's so much in pain. I understand because of Catherine's death, but what he does to Isabella is not good. Nothing justifies violence, of course. Yeah. So here, I like the fact that Emily Bronte doesn't show black and white characters. She doesn't describe, a black and white character, but all her characters are all nuanced, with a deep sadness in them, and that would explain as well their violence and also how they behave with others. So, which is very resemblant to real characters, real life characters. We are all full of um of kind of contradictory behaviors. So, and also what happened to us in the past also shape us as a person and makes us who we are. And it's never black and white. And it's also beautifully depicted here in her book. And that's something that is a difficult task as a writer, to have to find the right way to describe this. The Star of the Snow reminds me of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Yes, of course. Yes, this is a story that is identified or classified as a Gothic story, similarly to Frankenstein. I think they're from more or less the same. They're both 19th century writers. I don't know if they knew each other as writers, but I think Mary Shelley is probably, I don't know if who's first. I mean, who's the oldest? Right, the oldest writer, but it's very much the same dark Gothic style story. So yes, and the fact also with the creature in Frankenstein, I read actually an adaptation of Frankenstein a couple months ago, and we have also the description of the creature, and it's also an interesting story because of the character of the creature is not black and white. I mean, is not a character that is black and white because it's not we can't really consider it as we can ask ourselves, who is the monster actually? That's the question in this novel, because it's actually Victor Frankenstein who created the creature, and who abandoned the creature, but it's the creature who commits the crimes. But it comes from a place of isolation and loneliness again. and rejection from people. There are other aspects that just not justify to that justify the killing, but that are taken into account. Yes, exactly. The creature is very similar to Heathcliff. Yeah, we describe Heathcliff as a wild and strong man, and very with a very dark look, dark eyes, dark hair, and even says dark skin at some point in the book because he's full of dirt. But we can also wonder whether if he actually has a dark skin. So yes, there are a lot of similarities, and because it kind of reflects the society at the time, the Industrial Revolution, and the very hard environment and the very hard life at the time. So yes, and so many scientific advances in terms of Frankenstein, but I mean more related to Frankenstein's story. Here it's more in terms of business and trading and owning your house, being a landlord, being an accomplished man, and being a gentleman to be able to shine in society and be recognized. As we can see for Heathcliff, his only aim in his life will be to conquer Catherine's love. But yeah, when he becomes the man that she wanted or she expected from her husband, then it's too late. So yeah, this is the story so far. So thank you so much for joining today and being part of this live read along. Tomorrow we will read chapter 9 called Little Cathy. So it's going to be interesting to know more about the little girl of Catherine's little girl, and how she in what kind of young lady she becomes, or what kind of little girl she is. So we will discover this tomorrow, and I will it will be 6 p.m. tomorrow. So in the meantime, I say to you, have a good, I wish you a beautiful afternoon, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye bye.